Kevin Stewart, Mr. Do Right if you didn't know, and welcome back to The Topic Is. And today we are talking with Lorina Troy, and we're going to discuss something actually really serious today. I'm going to try not to be too silly and everything, but we're going to talk about a misdiagnosis that almost destroyed their family. Now, let me tell you something. I knew her husband when they were actually going through this, and look, I couldn't believe it. When he told me, I was like, "Nah, man, get out of here. You too nice. Stuff like that don't happen to you, especially not to nice people." But then start thinking about it. I'm like, well, yeah, it makes sense. Crazy stuff happens to good people, and it's sad that we see this. But this lady, this is a special lady. She wrote a book about her experience, and she wants to bring awareness to this because this needs to stop. This just needs to stop. But let me stop talking because this is not about me. This is about Lorina. Lorina, tell us a little something about yourself real quick, a little history and things like that about your family and stuff.
Sure. I'm a mom of 3 kids, and my family comes from Hawaii and Spain, and my husband, his family comes from Guam and Philippines. So we're mixed. Our nationality is mixed. We have a huge family, and I actually just published this book in July, and I'm really excited about that.
Okay.
To raise awareness.
Okay. So I guess the best thing for us to do right now is just tell us your story about, what the book is about. What happened to you and your family?
Okay. Well, it starts out a little bit about, a love story of how Jason and I met, us moving to Texas, and then some events that happened with our son. He was misdiagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's his diagnosis. It affects 3 babies every hour in the United States. So every 20 minutes, a baby is born with a similar condition. That's why I feel like it's really important to raise awareness. And babies are easily misdiagnosed, and it's just so important to raise awareness because this common condition could be easily misdiagnosed with other children and affect so many other families, all over the world.
So what happened?
Well, the thing is, our son was getting sick, so we took him to the hospital. They found fluid in his head, and they assumed that he was hurt in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that he was never hurt. I told the pediatric neurosurgeon at the hospital, I told him, our son was never hurt, could this be something else? And he said, yes, but since he's a baby and can't talk, we're just going to go with abuse. And walked away.
Do you feel that the doctor was wrong for taking the side of the child over the parents in this case?
Well, I believe that he was wrong in the fact that they didn't try to correctly diagnose our son. They just assumed the worst and went with that.
So basically they didn't do their due diligence in researching it and finding out. But I mean, if you feel like a child is in danger, you want to take them out of that dangerous situation.
Well, if there's evidence and proof that that's happening, then yes. But in our case, there wasn't. There was fluid in our son's head, yes. But we had no idea what happened until years later.
Right.
And our medical expert said he should have been correctly diagnosed from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to read his images correctly.
So after this diagnosis came out, was your son taken to other doctors per CPS and, tested further to see if this diagnosis was, did they back up the diagnosis with more proof?
See, he was misdiagnosed, and we're the ones that took him to different doctors 3 hours away, Fort Worth, Dallas, and even into Oklahoma, trying to find the correct diagnosis. They even sent us to geneticist doctors.
Mm-hmm.
They ran some genetic tests, and we spent like 2.5 years trying to find the correct medical expert to correctly diagnose our son.
Right.
And it's hard to find the correct one because it has to be someone that specializes in neuroscience and neurology, and he has experience for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he, right away, when he looked at all of our son's medical records and images, he said he confirmed, the medical expert did, he confirmed that our son was misdiagnosed.
Wow. That is tough.
The amazing thing about it is we hired 3 attorneys. So our 3rd attorney, he told us, you'd be surprised at what you could find in medical records. So send them all to me and I'm going to look through them. And he's the one that called us like 4 months later, and he's like, hey, I want to set up a meeting with you guys to talk about what I found. And our attorney actually found in the birth records that he had a complication at birth.
Really? So, even though you had a medical expert that said that your child was misdiagnosed, it was actually your attorney.
It was our attorney first, and then the attorney sent everything to the medical expert, and the medical expert confirmed.
Wow. So that's funny, because it's funny. Your attorney found the smoking gun, so to say, and then got somebody to back up his findings. Exactly. But yet, the doctor that diagnosed him wrong said, hey, I'm an expert. That's it. And everybody flew with it. Yeah. And it makes it tough because, when you have a professional, like a doctor or a lawyer, and they'll say, oh, I believe this, this, and that. And then everybody goes with it like, oh, well, that's what it's got to be because that person's a doctor or lawyer.
Exactly.
So how do you go about, I know you said that y'all had to take your child to a lot of doctors and stuff, but how do you go about trying to convince somebody who's already convinced of something? How do you appeal to that?
It's very difficult because they just see black and white. That's it. It's just, this is what we believe and that's what we're going to go with. So it took years, of fighting for the truth, and we knew that he was misdiagnosed. We just needed to find a medical expert that could actually correctly diagnose him.
Right. So, how did they treat y'all when y'all had to go in? And what happened? Once this diagnosis happened and CPS got involved, what happened from there?
Well, as you can imagine, once the doctors in the hospital assumed the worst, everyone was just cold, distant, didn't really want to talk to us.
Really?
Didn't want to give us, the benefit of the doubt. And it was really, really tough because we were telling the truth, Our kids mean the world to us and all of our family. We have hundreds of family members and they knew that he was misdiagnosed too.
Right.
Because they've known us forever and they know that our kids mean the world to us. And it was really tough because once they got involved, we investigated. My 4-year-old son at the time and my baby were taken from me.
Right.
Sorry.
No, you good.
And they were placed in foster care, and my 4-year-old lost 20 pounds in only 6 weeks from being taken from us. And they told us our baby would cry all day in foster care. So, as a mother, to see your children go through that and not be able to just fix it right away was devastating. We had to keep going to court and fight for them and stay strong for them.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you good. So, you about to get me.
Sorry.
No. So, what did you do to maintain your strength during this time? I know you had your husband, but your husband is going through this with you. Not to mention, I think they were ready to charge him with child abuse, right? So, what did you use? What did you lean on to get you through this time?
God, our prayer, our faith in God, our church, our support from our family and friends. And Jason and I had to really lean on each other and just stay strong.
Right.
There are days where it's just so overwhelming. We lost our kids for 5 months, so every single day, not having them was just devastating.
Right.
We only got to see them two days a week for only 2 hours, and those visits meant the world to us, but it was just so devastating when they had to leave.
I can't even imagine that. That's especially wrongly taking them away.
Yeah, wrongfully taken.
Now the DA is coming at you. Hey, we believe this and that. How was it dealing with them?
Well, they wrongfully accused my husband, and so that was just devastating. Not only our baby had to have 2 neurological surgeries by the time he was 5.5 months old. To see your baby have to go through all of that was devastating in its own. And then to have it just turned around on you, and especially your husband being wrongfully accused, it was just devastating.
Right.
And you're just shocked because you're just like, in good faith and trust in the doctors and the medical system, we took our child, who was sick, and to have it turn around on you is just it's devastating and you're in shock. So we knew that he was being wrongfully accused the whole time. So we had to fight for the truth.
Right.
We had to stay strong and not give up, and it was tough.
Yeah, they were trying to take away your whole family.
Yeah.
Wow, just pulling from all sides.
Yeah.
So the day your lawyer found the proof, found the doctor said, get that out of here. How did that day feel?
It was just relief, and we were just in shock again. Like, oh my gosh, we finally have the answers. Honestly, for 2.5 years, every single night I would stay up for a few hours and just look up all these medical expert reports, try to diagnose my son myself.
Right.
I wanted to go to medical school to correctly diagnose him. I was at that point.
You almost had your degree, probably.
Yeah. So, it was just a huge relief and just confirmation that we knew the whole time he was being misdiagnosed. We didn't know exactly what it was. And we were just like, oh, this whole time. How come the hospital that he was born at didn't tell, they didn't tell us anything?
So, for what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, the diagnosis was put in the records from the hospital where your son was born, but they just did not tell you what was going on.
Yeah, it's an externally in really small print.
Oh, just like everything in the world, right?
Yeah, and a bunch of details were left out, but there were little, cephalohematoma, certain things when he was born that points he had a birth injury. And his head, my son's head measured larger than normal in utero, in my stomach.
Okay.
So it consistently was getting larger and larger before birth, at birth, after.
Okay.
So, the proof is there that it was gradually getting larger and larger from birth, which is what we told the doctors. We're like, look, we noticed his head was getting larger from birth, and we told his pediatrician, she said he should be okay. He would get sick. We kept taking him to the doctors. Like, what else were we supposed to do?
How did the pediatrician not catch this?
That is a good question. I have no idea.
It just makes you wonder. They always do the height, the weight, and all that stuff.
At 4 months, it was finally caught. Like,
wow.
Take him to get images done. And when the doctors, the neurologist was looking at his images, to see the fluid accumulate since birth was very dangerous.
Right.
And they're just like, wow, it's a miracle. And they're looking at my son. It's a miracle that there's no damages. Like, he's completely fine. He does have a VP shunt. It's internal and it drains the fluid because it's chronic. See, that's the thing. They changed his diagnosis a few times at that hospital. And we're like, why did they start saying this, but yet it's chronic? And then they said, we don't know. I'm like, why does my son have this chronic condition? Why does he need a second surgery for the VP shunt to drain the chronic fluid? We don't know. And I'm like, really? You don't know, but yet you want to say all these, all this stuff at first. It's just...
So, let me tell you this as a matter of fact. So, that's what it is? Well, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Why does he have a chronic condition? Well, we don't know.
So, even before this misdiagnosis happened, you were still having trauma just trying to figure out what was going on with your child.
Exactly.
Wow. And then, not knowing what's going on with your child, no one can tell you. Now you get some doctor that says, oh, I know what it is. They just abusing their kid. Yeah, that's
what they said at first. And then when it became chronic and you needed a second surgery and asked them why it's chronic, well, we don't know. I'm like, so that's what really motivated me to pushed me, because I knew he was misdiagnosed. We just knew it, Jason and I. So we kept taking him to all kinds of doctors, and it took 2.5 years to find the medical expert that could correctly diagnose him.
And what is the correct diagnosis? I'll definitely want you to say it, because I tried, but I'm not even going to attempt that right now.
He had a complication at birth, and it's actually called benign external hydrocephalus of infancy. And it's believed to have arisen from a complication at birth.
So what is that? Do you know what that is?
I don't know exactly what it is, but it's accumulation of fluid in his head, it's chronic.
Now, that's something I definitely want to ask you about, because I didn't really understand that part. So is it fluid building up on the inside of his skull,
yes,
between his skull and his brain, or outside between the skin and the skull?
It was all the above.
All of it. He had fluid inside the skull and outside the skull. And so what the doctor saw was like a knot or something under his hair?
Just his head was, was expanding.
Oh, so he just saw that his head was getting bigger.
Yeah. And he had a common birth injury called a cephalohematoma. It actually caused, a lot of that's what stemmed from it.
Okay.
And we were looking through his pictures when he was born, once he was correctly diagnosed, and we saw the birth injury. And we were just like, oh my gosh, how did we not know? The nurse was giving him a bath. You could see it, and they didn't tell us anything.
Did it look like a bruise?
It was like a bump. It's a birth injury.
So it just looked like
It's a common birth injury that doctors assume just goes away, but sometimes it doesn't go away. It causes a chronic condition like arson.
Wow.
And every 20 minutes, a baby has a birth complication in the United States. So that's about 28,000 in a year. That could potentially be in our shoes. Hopefully not.
And misdiagnosed.
Yes, and that's why I feel it's so important to raise awareness, and that's why I wrote my book.
Tell me about what you're doing to raise awareness.
Well, I'm a part of a bunch of groups online, and I wrote my book, Miracles of Faith, to raise awareness. I'm connecting with families all over different states and all over the world. You know, families have contacted me in Florida, Texas, Idaho, Missouri, Georgia, California, even in Germany and India and Norway. You know, this is happening all over the world, and unfortunately it's not in the news yet when it should be, but you know, it's affecting so many families, and it's devastating.
Yeah, having your kids taken away from you is devastating by itself.
Extremely.
Then you have a medical problem with your child that you can't get anybody to tell you what it is. That's devastating in itself. You combine all of that stuff, and then financially, how did this situation treat you financially?
Well, we had to fight for our kids,
right?
You know, and you have to go to court. So we had to hire our own attorneys to fight for us. We hired 3, and so we sold our house and moved in a small apartment. My cousin Katrina, she's an attorney in Los Angeles for the city. So when all this first happened, she called me and she was like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" So I told her what's going on, and she was like, "That's horrible. He is misdiagnosed. You need to hire your own attorneys and fight this." And that's exactly what we did. We had to sell our house. You know, attorneys are awesome, but they're also kind of pretty expensive. And they're important because you need them to fight for you.
Yeah, well, if we didn't have other attorneys that was fighting you, you probably wouldn't need attorneys to fight. So what happened with the first 2 attorneys?
Honestly, I'm not trying to bash them in any way, but we didn't feel that they were doing everything necessary to fight for us.
Right.
So we hired a 3rd attorney, and he was amazing. He's the one that actually went through all the medical records and, was communicating with us in court. He would write down all of his notes. He's very thorough. He was the one that actually correctly diagnosed our son.
So I guess that just baffles me because you had the other 2 attorneys. They never went through your medical records?
Unfortunately not.
So they were just filing stuff with the court and like, hey, we need another extension or something like that, and that was it. It was like, okay, we'll sit on this, bill you a little bit more, and then keep you on the hook. So if you could have found that first attorney in the first place, well, not the first, found that last attorney in the first place, you wouldn't have probably had to go through so much financial destitution. I hope that's right, destitution. Then you wouldn't have to go through all this drama with CPS and everything. Man, this could have been over so much long. How many years was it?
2.5 years.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, a year in family court and 2.5 in criminal for my husband who's wrongfully accused.
Right.
Even I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, we went through so much, and it was just, it was kind of like this crazy tornado that just devastated everything, and then we were left with, okay, let's pick up the pieces and just rebuild.
So how are y'all now?
We're doing well now. Thank God our children, they're healthy and happy, and we're just rebuilding. It's going to take years to recuperate from everything, the loss, from everything. But, it causes such a deep, deep wound to these families, to have your children misdiagnosed and taken from you. It takes years to heal.
Right.
I mean, especially our children, it's just, to be taken out of your home and just separated, it's just devastating. I can't even explain it.
Financially, how hard was it during those 2.5 years? And what did you have to do to try to make it through, to keep the lights on and the rent paid and the lawyer in Mercedes Benzes and Maseratis?
Well, it was devastating in all aspects of our lives, and my husband, he has a top secret clearance in the military and the government. He had a job where he would travel to different bases in Texas and even into other states. And when this happened, he couldn't work there anymore. So he goes from an awesome career, excellent benefits, to unfortunately had to take a job in construction and delivering pizzas at night.
Man.
And, to see him go through that was just devastating. But, we had to stay strong through all of it. And I was working in an optometrist's office as well. I was actually driving 3 hours back and forth to work and to see my kids.
What? How did you find enough time in a 24-hour period to do everything that y'all were doing?
It was, God gave us the strength to get through it.
Yes.
Prayers, our family and friends, just so much support really helped, because when you go through, devastating things in life, it's so important to have that support system.
So besides the authorities, did anybody just pass judgment on you and just left you just basically flapping in the wind with this? Just, oh, you did this, or, they said you did it, and I can't mess with you no more.
No, because we have hundreds of family members and friends. They've known us since we were babies and all throughout our lives, and they've seen our interactions with our kids, and they know our kids mean the world to us. So they even knew, they're like, he was misdiagnosed for sure. And so we had to sell our house to pay for the attorney fees. We moved into a small apartment. We had to drain our savings, credit cards. Family donated, thousands of dollars. Attorneys are awesome, but they're also really expensive.
Yeah, well.
And you need them to fight for you.
Yeah, you almost have to be an attorney just to afford to pay an attorney.
Yeah, exactly.
So, tell people where they can find this book, especially if you're dealing with something like this right now.
This book, Miracles of Faith, Our Child Was Misdiagnosed, It Greatly Affected Our Lives, a diagnosis that shocked everyone and turned everything around, is available through westbowpress.com.
Mm-hmm.
It's our publishing company. They're the largest Christian publishing company in the world. It's Westbow Press, a division of Thomas Nelson and Zondervan, and it's an awesome company. I worked really hard to publish that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, after I went through writing, editing, publishing, I have a whole different aspect and respect of what goes on to have a book published. It's so much work.
Oh, I know.
Like, I really appreciate now every book I see authors, writers.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much work that goes into it, and I just really felt the need to be transparent, share our story, raise awareness, and it kind of gives people a step-by-step process of how to get through something so devastating, and how to come back on the other end to get through it and to fight for the truth and to win.
So what was the epiphany moment that told you, I need to start writing this book?
Well, I had a feeling that I needed to write it, and then it's funny, a few people in the church and people I knew, they're like, they came up to me and they're like, you should really write a book. So I thought about it, and I was just like, okay, I'll do it. But, I have 3 children, and it was really tough. I had to sacrifice my sleep at night. I would stay up till 3, 4 in the morning, writing, publishing, editing, and, it's worth it, though, and then I'd have to turn around the next day and take care of my kids. So I'd get like 4 hours of sleep sometimes.
Wow.
But it was worth it, I'd do it all over again. It was not an easy process. It was a lot of hard work.
So you say you'll do it all over again. Are you going to do it all over again?
Well, I am currently writing my second book.
Once you do your first one, you're hooked.
Yeah.
So is the next book going to be expounding on the experience from this ordeal?
Yes, it's gonna be an expansion, and also touch on a few other things that happened in our lives, with family and how they went through like cancer and those types of things. And our book can relate to anyone that's going through a tough, an extreme life challenge, because we all go through things in life, and
right.
We can all relate, even though it's not the same thing. It's like how we all have emotions and we all go through things, and we can all overcome them.
Right.
And our way of turning something so devastating and negative into a positive is to raise awareness and try to help other people and to share our story.
Especially if you've been through something, right?
Yeah.
So, before this incident, did you have a clear path of what you wanted to do in life? And after this incident, and you wrote your book and you're working on your second book, and you're being an advocate for this, do you feel like you're on the same path, or that this is the actual path you should have been on in the first place?
Well, before, I worked for Hilton in hotel management.
Okay.
I was an executive administrative assistant for the general manager and a front office supervisor. And then I went into optometry. I was an optician in an optometrist's office. But, it did actually turn everything into this direction. And this is the path that, I believe that God called me to be on to try to help other people.
So, even though you had to go through all of this, do you feel like you're on the right path?
Yes, and it definitely, when you go through some tough things, it definitely makes you stronger.
That was, you get out my head, because I was going to ask you that. Do you feel like you're stronger? Do you feel like your family is stronger now?
Yes.
Because of this?
For sure.
So, then the $64,000 question. If you're too young to know what $64,000 question is, Google it. Question is, and I kind of know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you regret going through this? Seeing where you at now today and what you're doing helping other people. Do you regret having to go through this situation? I mean, I know you don't want to.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go through nothing like that. But do you regret it?
Honestly, it's kind of both. Like, I wish we didn't have to go through the devastation that we went through. But yet we had to go through it. We had no choice. There are many families out there that are having to go through the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have a choice. So you just, we did get emotional at times, like anyone would.
Right.
And it was really tough at times, but you overcome it and you become stronger. So kind of like a yes and no.
I know that it's one of those bittersweet things, right?
Because now, I've reached out to so many other families. Honestly, a mother was just speaking to me in Florida, and she was devastated because
mm-hmm.
she's still in this storm. And I was able to be there for her. And, my heart broke for her because I know exactly how she feels.
Mm-hmm.
To miss her children, to be going through all of this. And, just to be there for her, to comfort her, it meant so much to me. It meant a lot to her, but it meant so much to me to be able to be there for her.
Right.
Because I was once in her shoes. And, it meant a lot to have other people there for us.
Right. Especially since you were going through it and you didn't have that resource.
Yeah.
And you could be that resource for her. And you've been through it, so you can help comfort her and keep her strong so she can keep going through and get to the goal of getting her kids back.
And the awesome thing is I was able to connect her with our medical expert. Mm-hmm. And I told her,
wow.
you're 2.5 years above, everything, because it took us 2.5 years to find him.
Right.
So she was just so grateful. And
yes.
My heart really goes out to families and prayers, to so many people that are going through this too, because it's devastating.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other end, you overcome, and it makes you stronger. You're a lot stronger now.
Now, here come, I'm finna poke you for a second. That doctor that misdiagnosed your child. After that misdiagnosis, did you ever have to interact with him again?
Unfortunately, I did. They requested, the government agencies, they requested that I continue taking our son to see him.
Wow.
For some reason, it's just, and then when everything was done, I kindly told them, where my son is seeing a different doctor as a primary pediatric neurosurgeon. But I had to let him know, just so that they wouldn't throw out alerts there. I called him and I left him a message. If there's any concerns, please call me.
Wow.
He's going to be seeing another doctor as his primary neurosurgeon.
What about any more interactions with the district attorney office? Or did they just wipe their hands of it and walk away?
Well, once he was correctly diagnosed, our attorney, told him, this is what really happened. They just stepped back and were like, well, we feel the need that, we don't feel like we have enough evidence. We're just going to go ahead and dismiss.
And it was just like, sorry about that.
Yep.
Our bad.
It's like, whoops, let's just kind of like sweep it under the rug and act like this never happened. And we're just like, wow.
Did I get an apology?
There's no apology. I told my husband that. I was like, hey, when you went to court, did they say sorry? He's like, no. It's just, it's devastating.
Yeah, they wag the finger at you, but then when those 3 fingers point back at them, say, oh, no, you wrong. Oh.
Whoops.
I'm just doing my job. Right?
It's horrible.
So, let me ask you this. Where's some of the places your new book is at?
Well, I sent my book to the governor's office, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, and he wrote a letter to me confirming that our book is now in his office. And then I also sent a copy of our book and a letter to the First Lady and the President. And the First Lady wrote a letter to me, Melania Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And our book is now in the White House with her.
That's
So
nice.
it's pretty exciting. I keep hoping and praying that she will reach out.
Right.
You know, I know they're a part of so many other organizations to help the children. And, you know, I really appreciate a letter because I know they can't send millions of letters out to everybody.
Okay.
And I just greatly appreciate the letter. And I know that they're actively, involved in many organizations to help children.
Okay. Well, I hope they get on board with this because,
Yes, I hope so.
I mean, you can help children by keeping them with their parents,
Yeah.
especially if they're in a situation like this. If it's a situation where the kids are in a bad home, then yes, we need to fight to make sure those children are safe. But we also have to do our due diligence to make sure that we have all the facts, that we know what's actually going on,
Yes.
and make those decisions wisely, because just as easily as a child life can be destroyed by an abusive parent, a family can be destroyed by jumping to judgment too quickly.
Yeah,
Do you
a
agree?
misdiagnosis, yeah.
Yes, for real. So, you said not only do you have the book, but you go around and do speaking engagements.
Yes.
Tell me about the speaking engagement, or maybe one of your speaking engagements that something interesting happened or something like that.
Well, I speak at local churches.
Mhm.
Hopefully someday, in businesses or even in the medical system to raise awareness would be awesome.
Right.
I've been really praying about that. The speaking at churches and everything, it's going pretty well.
Okay.
To raise awareness and share our testimony, it's a powerful story. About everything that we went through and everything that we had to do to overcome these serious life challenges.
You have people come up to you afterwards and pick your brain more, or want you to come and speak to someone else, or
Yes.
Okay.
How did you write your book? Like, what's the
Yeah.
publishing company? How are you guys doing now?
Okay. Last thing, if somebody is going through something like this, and I know they're reaching out to you in the Facebook groups, but is there some kind of nonprofit organization or something like that, another resource that they can turn to try to get help?
There are, the Innocence Family Project is one of them that I've heard of, and The Syndrome is excellent documentary.
What is it again?
The Syndrome.
Okay.
It speaks about how shaken baby syndrome is a false diagnosis, and the effects of that is just, it devastates the families. And there are medical expert doctors on there that actually are saying, in fact, it is a false diagnosis.
So you saying that shaken baby syndrome is not real?
It's not real. It's a false diagnosis. And that's what they tried to say at first with us. And we're like, there is no way.
Do you know what shaken baby syndrome is?
Well, they assume if you
Right.
shake a baby, they have fluid in their head. But it's a false diagnosis.
Huh. Okay.
They actually take a scientist's studies and use it for their diagnosis, when the scientists themselves said this was not what my studies were for.
Oh, I understand. I got you. So
And there are-
basically, they cherry pick information to
Yes,
back up.
pick and choose.
Oh, okay.
And there are doctors on the syndrome that are saying this is a false diagnosis. It is not true.
Wow. Well, I thank you so much for letting me come into your home and interview you and get the word out about this misdiagnosis that just devastated your family. I think you are a strong woman.
Thank you.
You definitely got some strong kids.
Yes.
And your husband is strong for sure. And y'all one of the nicest families that I know. And
Thank you.
just can't believe that you had to go through this. But I'm glad that you came out the other end and you're stronger than ever.
Yes,
Okay.
for sure. And we would like to give you a copy of our book
What?
too.
I get a book.
Thank you so much for having us on your
Oh,
show.
no.
We love your show. We've seen many videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, nah, I just feel so special. So, I thank y'all for joining me and joining Miss Lorina Troy here for our interview. I gotta get my fat butt off the sofa a little bit. There's a million videos out there that you can be watching. You chose to view this one. I appreciate you. She appreciates you.
Thank you.
Little JJ appreciates you. And we are out.